Let's talk about puzzle tricks that can fool even the experts. And by looking at these different tricks or these strategies that are often used in the designs of treasure hunts and escape rooms and puzzles and other things like that, we can begin to develop some really strong thinking skills and problem solving skills, decision thinking skills that can help us in everyday life as well. That's one of the reasons why I'm intrigued by the role of structured play and games in modern life. I think they can lead us on a path to clearer thinking, which our world desperately needs. So I've jotted down 5 that I'd like to walk through with you, and I picked an example for each one. So you might want to actually pause after I give you the clue and sort of jot down some thoughts, think about it, and see if you can't figure it out. I think that will get you even more out of this video, but it's up to you. You can use this video however you see fit, of course. The first one I want to talk about is anchoring bias. Now, I have a whole video dedicated to the idea of anchoring bias as one of the predominant cognitive biases. And it's this idea that we kind of anchor ourselves to a specific clue or idea or concept, and we become kind of blind to all of the others around it. So let me give you an example here. Here's a riddle. It's a very well-known one, so you may already know the solution to this, but we can kind of dissect it a little bit just to get a little better understanding of anchoring bias. So here's the riddle. A man leaves home, he turns left 3 times, and he sees 2 masked men. What am I describing? So this is an anchoring bias. You get this kind of anchor probably framed by the 2 masked men. It's a strong image. It immediately draws you to think about some criminals, someone that's getting ready to be robbed or something like that. But really, this whole thing is describing baseball. A man leaves home base, turns left 3 times, and sees 2 masked men at the home plate. So the way that this works, though, is that anchoring bias kind of locks you in to the first kind of plausible frame, the most plausible explanation, and that strong language of 2 masked men. It gives you those immediate images, and you get anchored on that, and then you lose the ability to really come to a conclusion. So one of the ways that we solve puzzles in life and in games and other things like that is we have to force ourselves out of those anchors that we get tied to. We have to pull the anchors up and allow ourselves to look for alternate options and possibilities. And again, I have a whole video on how to try to avoid anchoring bias specifically and how you can work your way through it. So you might want to check out that video if you want to learn a little bit more about it. The next one, and this is going to be a little bit hard, the example that I've given you, I'll go ahead and put the numbers up on the screen for the video because my reading it might actually be a little bit deceptive. But this one is about pattern heuristics. So heuristics are the tools, the methods that we develop, formal and informal, the methods that we develop for solving problems and doing things in our life. Heuristics can be as simple as your morning routine for showering and brushing your teeth and everything like that. But heuristics are also the kinds of methods that you default to try to solve problems. And when we're dealing with pattern heuristics, there's something that's called apophenia. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go to the video that I have dedicated entirely to apophenia. But I'm going to describe this in terms of encountering sequences and looking for patterns within sequences, like numeric sequences. So right now, I'm going to give you a sequence of numbers, and then you have to try to figure out what is the next one in this sequence. So the first one is 1, the second one is 11, the third is 21, the fourth is 1,211, and the next one is 111,221. So what is the next one in this sequence? You can go to pause. You would have to write these out, maybe look at them, kind of see if you can identify the pattern. And this is an example of pattern heuristic. Is most people, because I'm using numbers, you are thinking mathematically. You're looking for doubling powers or the Fibonacci sequence or something else that's numeric. But the actual solution to this one is not actually mathematical. It is a look and say sequence. And even the way that I said it in this video was deceptive because I framed it as something that's numeric. But the first one in the sequence is 1. And then the second is not actually 11, it's 1, 1, which looks like 11. And the third one that I said as 21 is two ones. I'm sorry. It's just two ones. So you have a two and a one. And so it's actually a look and say it's a verbal solution, but you were framing it around some kind of mathematical or numeric solution because that's just how it would make sense. You went right to the heuristic that seemed to be most relevant because I was talking about numbers. And that is something that's used oftentimes in puzzles and riddles and treasure hunts and other things like that, is it introduces something in a way that makes you think that you should probably use a certain heuristic when in fact another one is what's necessary to solve the riddle. Okay, the third one is we'll call it false symmetry. So in escape rooms and visual puzzles, clues are often hidden right in plain sight, but your attention is usually drawn to really clean patterns and centered props and things that are symmetrical and maybe really colorful or something like that. But oftentimes the real clue is in something subtle, an irregular screw or an off-center smudge, or you could just see, something on the wall that's just a little bit out of the ordinary. And that's why I have a whole video on grid searching methods and spiral searching methods, different methods of searching spaces, because it forces you to attend to a small section space and learn to just kind of scan it and look for things that are out of place and out of the ordinary. But we have this kind of idea of we're drawn to the things that are symmetrical, and we start focusing upon the things that really pop out initially that are symmetrical and make sense, but it's the asymmetrical that might actually be the solution oftentimes. Something really interesting to look at. So sometimes the pattern is what you're trying to identify, but other times a great design for escape rooms and treasure hunts and other things like that is it's the non-pattern that's the clue, the thing that doesn't quite fit. The fourth one is framing fixation. So framing is this idea where you start to talk about some kind of topic or idea and you use a certain metaphor, a certain way of thinking about it, and then you just get stuck on that. It's kind of like the anchoring bias. So let me give you an example of a riddle. A man pushes his car to a hotel and he loses his fortune. So you're imagining a real world scenario, right? He's pushing his car to a hotel and loses his fortune. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Why is a guy pushing his car down the road to get to a hotel and lose his fortune? And so it seems a little bit odd, but you're just kind of stuck on the actual objects in the real world. Of course, you're stuck in that real world frame. But if you frame it as a board game, now all of a sudden, man is pushing his car to a hotel, loses his fortune. It's describing Monopoly, right? This happens to us all the time in our lives, where we are using a particular frame for a problem or a situation that we're in, and we are just stuck thinking about it in a certain frame of reference. But if only we could kind of change categories and look at it through the lens of a new category, we could see something that actually will help us solve the problem, discover the real truth, discover the literal or metaphorical treasure. Okay, let's go on to the last one then, which is cognitive fluency bias. And here's the riddle that I have for you on this one. What's always coming but never arrives? Now, this one, cognitive fluency bias, is we oftentimes reject solutions that seem a little bit too easy. We've been conditioned to think that the best answers are often more complex. And so we start diving in and looking for more complexity than actually exists in the riddle. And so the solution is right there in front of us. So what was the answer to this? What's always coming but never arrives? The answer is tomorrow. And it's a pretty obvious one after you hear it and you think about it, and sometimes we just skip over it because it seemed a little bit too simple for us. Now, these are just 5 of the many different kinds of devices and tools that go into the design of great riddles, great puzzles, great treasure hunts, escape rooms, and other things like that. But again, what I find so fascinating is these are also clues to how to think more clearly, more deeply, solve problems, come to creative solutions, and again, as I often talk about, discover those literal and metaphorical treasures in our lives. I hope you find this useful. I look forward to your comments.